The crystalline spires of Lumeria stretched toward the triple moons, their surfaces reflecting the pale light in shifting patterns that had once drawn visitors from across the galaxy. Now, those same spires stood as silent sentinels over a civilization on the brink of extinction. The Aetherians, once revered as the keepers of the galaxy's most profound secrets, were facing their final twilight. Dr. Sarah Vale, one of the last functioning Aetherian archivists, moved through the great library's empty halls, her translucent form casting prismatic shadows on the ancient walls. The quantum plague had already claimed most of her people, not through death, but through something far more insidious, the gradual erasure of consciousness itself. Those affected simply faded away, their memories and awareness dispersing like stardust in the solar wind. The library, once bustling with scholars and seekers of knowledge from 1,000 worlds, now echoed with emptiness. Sarah's footsteps whispered against the crystal floors as she made her way to the core chamber, where the collected wisdom of eons was stored in quantum matrices. Her own consciousness was beginning to show the first signs of degradation, but she refused to submit to despair. Archive entry 2749 Delta. She spoke into the void, her voice steady despite the weight of her task. The quantum plague continues its advance. Our attempts to understand its nature have proven futile. The Galactic Council's quarantine remains in effect, and all requests for aid have been denied. The room's crystalline walls pulsed with a soft blue light, acknowledging her words. Sarah placed her hand against a nearby crystal, watching as data streams flowed beneath its surface. The Aetherians have been the guardians of knowledge for over 10,000 years, their unique ability to interface directly with quantum information systems, making them the perfect custodians of the galaxy's collective wisdom. But that same gift had become their curse. The plague targeted the quantum structures of their consciousness, unraveling the very essence of what made them who they were. It had started subtly, a few forgotten memories, moments of confusion, gaps in awareness. Within months, it had spread throughout their population, leaving behind empty shells where brilliant minds once dwelled. The Galactic Council, once their closest allies, had reacted with fear rather than compassion. The quarantine had been swift and absolute. Supply ships stopped coming. Communication channels went dark. The few alien researchers who had been studying the plague were recalled to their homeworlds. The Aetherians, who had shared their knowledge freely with all species, found themselves alone in their hour of greatest need. Sarah moved deeper into the library, past rows of quantum crystals containing everything from the mathematical proofs of long-dead civilizations to the collected poetry of species that had evolved and gone extinct, while the Aetherians watched. Her people had been the memory of the galaxy, and soon that memory would fade forever. We detected another anomaly in the outer regions. A quiet voice spoke from the shadows. Kiran, her research partner and one of the few remaining Aetherian scientists, emerged from between the crystal columns. His form flickered slightly, a sign that the plague was progressing within him as well. "Show me," Sarah responded, following him to a nearby terminal. The holographic display sparked to life, showing a disturbance in the quantum field that surrounded their world. The plague had altered the very fabric of reality around Lumeria, creating a barrier that was as much metaphysical as it was physical. "The pattern is changing," Kiran explained, his voice betraying a hint of excitement despite their dire circumstances. "There's something different about the quantum signatures, something we haven't seen before." Sarah studied the readings, her trained mind picking through the complex data streams. "It's as if something is pressing against the barrier from the outside. But that's impossible. The quarantine is absolute." A sudden alarm echoed through the halls, its crystalline tone reverberating off the ancient walls. Both Aetherians turned toward the source of the sound, the long-range sensor array that had been silent for months. "Ships," Kiran whispered, his form stabilizing momentarily with shock. "Multiple vessels approaching the outer boundary." They rushed to the observatory, their translucent forms gliding through the crystal corridors. The observatory's dome opened to the star-filled sky, its quantum imaging systems already focusing on the approaching vessels. The ships were unlike anything in their database, cruder than the sleek vessels of the Galactic Council, but numerous and moving with purpose. Unknown configuration, Sarah noted, her fingers dancing through the holographic interface. Their quantum signatures are chaotic, unrefined. They're not using standard drive systems. As they watched, the lead ship approached the quantum barrier that had imprisoned their world. According to all known physics, it should have been deflected, turned away by the same forces that had kept them isolated for so long. Instead, it pushed forward, its primitive engines flaring against the barrier. Impossible, Kieran breathed, watching as the barrier rippled and distorted around the ship. Their technology shouldn't be capable of this. They're not using quantum fields or phase arrays. They're just pushing through. A communication signal pierced the barrier, carrying with it a message in a language the library's systems took a moment to translate. When it did, both Aetherians stood in stunned silence. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Horizon. We've received your distress signals. We're here to help." Sarah and Kieran exchanged glances, their forms shimmering with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Earth. They had heard of this world, a primitive planet on the edges of known space, its people just beginning to reach for the stars. The Galactic Council had dismissed them as too young, too reckless to join the greater community of spacefaring races. Yet here they were, pushing through barriers that had defeated the most advanced races in the galaxy, driven by nothing more than the determination to answer a call for help. "We should not respond," Kieran said softly, though his tone lacked conviction. "The quarantine exists for a reason. If the plague spreads to them." Sarah moved to the communication array, her decision already made. Their people had been the guardians of knowledge for thousands of years, but perhaps it was time to learn something new. Something about courage, about hope, about refusing to accept the boundaries that others had set. "Earth vessel Horizon," she transmitted, her voice carrying across the quantum void. "We are the Aetherians. Welcome to Lumeria. Please, help us." As the human ships drew closer, breaking through the barrier that had imprisoned them for so long, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since the plague began: hope. The Aetherians had been the guardians of the galaxy's knowledge, but perhaps humanity would become the guardians of something even more precious: the right of all beings to choose compassion over fear, courage over caution, and hope over despair. The first chapter in a new story was about to begin, written not in the quantum crystals of the library, but in the hearts of two species reaching across the void to help one another survive. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the Horizon, watching as her ship descended through Lumeria's shimmering atmosphere. The planet below was unlike anything humanity had encountered in their brief ventures into deep space, a world of crystalline structures and quantum architecture that defied conventional physics. But it was the silence that struck her most deeply. This was a civilization in twilight, its great achievements standing in mute testimony to what was being lost. "Environmental readings are stable," reported Dr. James Morrison, the ship's chief xenobiologist. "The quantum plague appears to be non-infectious to human biology. We're safe to proceed with direct contact." Sarah nodded, though her eyes remained fixed on the approaching spires of the great library. The decision to break through the quarantine barrier hadn't been an easy one. Earth's governments had debated for weeks after first detecting the Aetherian distress signals. The Galactic Council's warnings had been explicit. Any contact with the quarantined world would result in immediate sanctions against Earth. But humanity had never been good at walking away from those in need. The Horizon touched down on a landing platform that rippled like liquid crystal beneath the ship's weight. Sarah led the first contact team out onto the surface, where they were met by two translucent figures, the Aetherians who had responded to their initial communication. "I am Sarah Vale," the taller figure said, her form shimmering with patterns of light that seemed to reflect her emotions. "This is Kieran. We had almost lost hope that anyone would come." Sarah removed her helmet, letting the alien air touch her skin for the first time. Earth doesn't abandon those who need help. We've brought scientists, medical experts, and quantum physicists. Whatever this plague is, we'll face it together. The next few days were a flurry of activity as more human ships arrived, bringing equipment and personnel. The Horizon's crew worked alongside the remaining Aetherian scholars, setting up research stations throughout the Great Library. Dr. Morrison and his team began studying the quantum plague's effects, while engineers worked to interface human technology with the library's ancient systems. But it wasn't just about the science. Sarah watched as her crew formed bonds with the Aetherians, learning their stories, sharing meals in the crystal halls, and listening to tales of a galaxy that humanity had only begun to explore. The Aetherians' initial hesitation gave way to curiosity about these younger beings who had defied the Council to help them. "Your species is unexpected," Karen told Sarah one evening as they walked through the library's lower levels. "Your technology is primitive by our standards, yet you achieved what the most advanced races could not. You broke through the barrier." Sarah smiled. "Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. Your barrier was designed to repel quantum manipulation and advanced dry systems. We just pushed through with good old-fashioned thrust and determination." But the situation was growing more dire. More Aetherians were falling to the plague each day, their consciousness fragmenting like shattered crystal. The human scientists worked tirelessly, trying to understand the quantum mechanics involved, but the plague's complexity was beyond anything they had encountered. "There's something we haven't told you," Sarah admitted during an emergency meeting. Her form flickered more prominently now, a sign of the plague's advancement. "The library. It's more than just a repository of knowledge. It's connected to our consciousness, to the quantum structure of our very being. As we fade, the library fades with us. And if it falls, the collected knowledge of the galaxy will be lost." Sarah finished, understanding the full weight of what was at stake. But why didn't the Council help? Surely they understood the importance. Kiran's form pulsed with what might have been anger. They feared what they didn't understand. The plague frightened them, made them question the very nature of consciousness and reality. It was easier to quarantine us than to face those questions. A warning klaxon interrupted their discussion. Lieutenant Rivera, Sarah's tactical officer, burst into the room. "Captain, we've got multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Galactic Council signatures. They're charging weapons." Sarah's expression hardened. She had known this confrontation was coming, had prepared for it since the moment Earth decided to break the quarantine. "Get everyone back to their ships. Prepare for defensive operations." "You should leave," Sarah said softly. "You've already risked too much for us. The Council will destroy your ships, embargo your world." "That's not how we do things," Sarah replied, her voice firm. "Humanity didn't come this far to run at the first sign of trouble. We're here to help, and that's exactly what we're going to do." She turned to her crew. "Contact Earth, tell them the situation, and get me a channel to those Council ships. If they want to stop us from helping the Aetherians, they're going to have to do it face to face." As the humans rushed to their battle stations, Sarah and Kiran watched with a mixture of awe and concern. They had been the guardians of knowledge for millennia, but perhaps they still had much to learn from these younger beings, about courage, about standing up for what was right, and about the power of refusing to abandon hope even in the darkest of times. The library's crystal walls hummed with energy, reflecting the tension in the air. Above Lumeria's surface, human ships moved into defensive positions, their primitive but sturdy hulls gleaming in the light of the triple moons. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of the Aetherians, but perhaps the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. And as Sarah Chen prepared to face down the might of the Galactic Council, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Sometimes the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy could learn a thing or two from the newcomers who still remembered what it meant to be brave. Dr. James Morrison stared at the holographic display floating above the library's central research chamber, his tired eyes tracking patterns that seemed to defy conventional physics. Around him, human and Aetherian scientists worked in harmony, their combined knowledge pushing against the boundaries of what both species thought possible. "The plague isn't just affecting their consciousness," he muttered, manipulating the three-dimensional model of an Aetherian's quantum structure. "It's unwriting them from reality itself." The discovery had come after weeks of relentless research, conducted under the looming threat of the Galactic Council fleet that now surrounded Lumeria. The Council ships maintained their blockade, but they hadn't opened fire. Not yet. Captain Chen's bold stance and Earth's unexpected show of force had created an uneasy stalemate. "Look at this," called Dr. Maya Patel, one of Earth's leading quantum physicists. She gestured to a series of readings from their latest experiments. "The Aetherian's consciousness doesn't just interface with quantum systems. It exists in a quantum state itself. They're living quantum computers." Sarah Vale approached the display, her form flickering more severely now. The plague's progress was accelerating. Yes, it's what made us ideal guardians of knowledge. We don't simply store information. We become one with it. The library isn't just a building. It's part of us. And we are part of it. The humans had set up their equipment throughout the library's vast chambers, their relatively primitive technology creating a stark contrast with the ancient quantum architecture. But it was this very contrast that had led to their first breakthrough. "The plague is like a quantum virus," Maya explained, pulling up another display. "It's not just attacking your bodies or minds. It's corrupting the quantum information that makes you who you are. But our instruments, they're seeing something the Council's advanced technology missed." James moved closer to the display, his excitement building. "Because we're still using classical computing in some of our systems, we're seeing the quantum effects from the outside, like watching shadows on a wall. The Council's quantum-based technology was too integrated, too similar to Aetherian systems. They couldn't see the forest for the trees." In the days since this discovery, they had made rapid progress. Human scientists, unencumbered by centuries of quantum computing doctrine, approached the problem from angles the galaxy's more advanced races had never considered. They combined old-fashioned chemical analysis with quantum theory, classical physics with exotic mathematics. "Captain Chen," James called over the comm system, "I think we found something. Can you come to the research chamber?" Sarah arrived minutes later, her uniform showing signs of the long hours she'd spent negotiating with both Earth's governments and the Council fleet. "Give me good news, Doctor. The Council's patience is wearing thin. We think we know what the plague is, and more importantly, where it came from," Maya said, bringing up a new set of displays. "It's not natural, and it's not an accident. Someone engineered this." The room fell silent. Sarah and Kiran exchanged glances, their forms synchronizing momentarily in shared concern. "The quantum signatures have a pattern," James explained, highlighting sections of code that pulsed through the holographic display. "It's subtle, but it's there. This plague was designed to target the specific quantum frequency of Aetherian consciousness. It's not just killing them, it's erasing their entire civilization." Sarah's expression hardened. Who would have the capability to do this? And why? "That's the interesting part," Maya interjected. "The technology required. It's beyond anything currently known in the galaxy. Beyond even the Aetherians. This came from somewhere else, or someone else." Kiran moved forward, his flickering form casting strange shadows on the crystal walls. There were legends, stories in the deepest archives of the library, tales of those who came before, who existed in states of being we could barely comprehend. We thought they were myths. "The precursors," Sarah whispered, her voice carrying the weight of ancient knowledge. "A civilization that transcended quantum mechanics itself. They vanished eons ago, leaving only fragments of their technology scattered across the galaxy." James nodded, pulling up more data. Someone found one of those fragments and weaponized it. The plague isn't just a disease. It's a key, trying to unlock something within the quantum structure of your consciousness. The question is, what is it trying to unlock, and who wants access badly enough to erase an entire civilization to get it? The implications were staggering. The Etherians weren't just victims of a plague. They were targets of something far more sinister. Their role as guardians of knowledge had made them custodians of secrets that someone desperately wanted to uncover. "We need to move fast," Sarah said, her mind already racing with the tactical implications. "If we're right about this, the Council needs to know. This isn't just about the Etherians anymore. It's about the entire galaxy." But before she could continue, alarms blared throughout the library. Lieutenant Rivera's voice cracked over the comm. "Captain, the Council fleet is powering up weapons. Multiple ships are moving into attack positions." Sarah turned to the scientists. "How close are we to a solution?" James and Maya shared a look. "We have a theory," Maya said, "but it's risky. We'd need to synchronize all our quantum research systems with the library's core, create a feedback loop that could potentially reverse the plague's effects. But if we're wrong, it could accelerate the process, destroy both the Etherians and the library instantly," James finished. Sarah looked at Sarah and Kiran, who stood amid the swirling holographic displays, their forms growing fainter by the hour. Time was running out, and now the Council was making its move. They needed a solution, and they needed it now. The fate of not just one civilization, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. And once again, it would come down to humanity's greatest strengths: the ability to think unconventionally, the courage to take risks, and the determination to save those others had abandoned. The Galactic Council's ultimatum echoed through the Horizon's command center. "You have 1 hour to withdraw from Lumerian space, or we will open fire. This is your final warning." Captain Sarah Chen stood at the tactical display, watching as the Council's warships moved into attack formation. Their ships were technological marvels, each one capable of overwhelming Earth's entire fleet. But humanity had never been one to back down from impossible odds. "All ships, battle stations," she ordered, her voice calm despite the tension. "Form defensive pattern Delta around the library. Whatever happens, we hold the line." Below, in the library's quantum core, the joint human-Etherian science team raced against time. Dr. Morrison and Dr. Patel worked frantically to integrate their experimental setup with the ancient systems, while Sarah and Kiran, their forms now barely visible, guided them through the complex quantum interfaces. "The synchronization has to be perfect," Maya explained, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic controls. "1 microsecond off, and we could accelerate the plague instead of stopping it." James nodded, checking the connections between their crude but effective human technology and the library's quantum matrices. "It's like performing heart surgery with stone tools, but sometimes the simplest approaches work best." Above them, the first shots were fired. A Council destroyer launched a warning salvo that streaked past the human fleet, lighting up Lumeria's atmosphere with artificial auroras. The human ships held their positions, their crews tense but determined. "This is Captain Chen to all Council vessels," Sarah broadcast on all frequencies. "We know what the plague really is. It's not a natural phenomenon. It's a weapon created from precursor technology. Someone is trying to access ancient secrets hidden within the Etherian consciousness. If you destroy them, you're playing right into the real enemy's hands." The Council's response was immediate and dismissive. "Your primitive understanding of quantum mechanics has led you to false conclusions. Stand down, or be destroyed with the contaminated." Sarah turned to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant Rivera, are the countermeasures ready?" "Yes, Captain. All ships are equipped with the quantum pulse generators. They won't hurt the Council ships, but they'll create enough interference to buy us some time. Deploy them as needed. We just need to hold out until the science team completes their work." In the quantum core, the situation was growing critical. Sarah's form had become so transparent that she was barely visible, and Karen struggled to maintain his coherence long enough to assist with the final calculations. "The plague is accelerating," Maya announced, her voice tense. "We're seeing cascading quantum failures throughout the Aetherian population. If we don't act now, there won't be anyone left to save." James looked up from his calculations. "The synchronization matrix is as ready as it's going to get. But there's a problem. The power requirements. We'll need to divert energy from the defensive shields. It'll leave us vulnerable." Above, the battle had begun in earnest. The Council ships launched their first real attack, their advanced weapons testing the human fleet's defenses. Earth's ships responded with a barrage of quantum pulses, creating zones of distorted space-time that confused the Council's targeting systems. "They're trying to break through to the library," Rivera reported. "Our countermeasures won't hold them for long." Sarah made her decision. "This is Captain Chen to all Earth vessels. Divert power from shields to the library. Whatever happens next, the Aetherians are our priority." The human ship shields dimmed as they channeled their energy into the quantum core. Council weapons fire began to find its mark, scoring hits against the now vulnerable vessels. But still, they held their positions. In the core, the combined power of the human fleet surged through the ancient systems. Maya and James worked in perfect synchronization, their movements a dance of scientific precision. Sarah and Kiran, with their last remaining strength, merged their consciousness with the library systems. "Ready," Maya called out, initiating quantum reversal in 3, 2, 1. The library's crystal walls blazed with unprecedented energy as human determination met Aetherian knowledge in a desperate gambit for survival. The quantum pulse rippled outward, intersecting with the plague's own quantum signatures. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The battle above paused as both human and Council ships were bathed in quantum phenomena that defied their sensors. Within the library, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. Then something unprecedented happened. The plague's quantum structure began to unravel, not through brute force or advanced technology, but through the unlikely combination of human ingenuity and Aetherian wisdom. The very simplicity of Earth's approach had created a resonance that the plague's complex programming couldn't adapt to. Sarah's form suddenly solidified, her quantum structure stabilizing for the first time in months. Around her, other Aetherians began to reappear, their consciousness returning from the brink of extinction. The library's crystals pulsed with renewed life as the ancient knowledge within was preserved. But the victory came with a price. Several human ships had taken heavy damage protecting the library, their hulls scarred by Council weapons. The remaining vessels maintained their defensive positions, even as their shields failed and their hulls began to buckle. "Council vessels, hold your fire." Sarah's voice rang out across space. "Look at your readings. The plague is being reversed. The Aetherians are recovering. You can verify it with your own sensors." There was a long moment of silence as the Council ships processed this impossible turn of events. Their sensors confirmed what they couldn't quite believe. A primitive species, using relatively basic technology, had solved a crisis that had baffled the galaxy's greatest minds. In the quantum core, Sarah stood fully restored, her form glowing with renewed energy. She turned to the human scientists who had made it possible. "You did it. You actually did it." James smiled, exhausted but triumphant. "We did it together." Sometimes the best solutions come from combining different perspectives. But even as they celebrated this victory, Maya's sensors picked up something troubling. A new quantum signature, something ancient and powerful, stirring deep within the library systems. The precursor technology that had been weaponized into the plague had unlocked something, and now they would all have to face the consequences of that discovery. A hush fell over the library's quantum core as ancient systems, dormant for millennia, hummed to life. The successful reversal of the plague had triggered something deep within the crystalline architecture, something that had been waiting for precisely this moment. "These readings are off the scale," Maya whispered, watching as new quantum signatures emerged from the library's depths. It's like the entire structure is awakening. Sarah and Kiran, their forms now fully restored, moved closer to the central crystal matrix. The other Etherians who had survived the plague gathered around them, their collective consciousness resonating with the library's awakening systems. The precursors, Sarah breathed, her voice filled with wonder. This is what they wanted us to find. The plague wasn't just a weapon, it was a test. Above, the Council fleet remained in position, their weapons powered down but ready. The human ships, battle-scarred but unbowed, maintained their protective formation around Lumeria. Captain Chen had descended to the core chamber, drawn by the unprecedented energy readings. What kind of test? Sarah asked, watching as patterns of light danced through the crystal walls. James studied the emerging data. The plague was designed to push us toward this moment. It needed both species, the Aetherians' quantum consciousness, and humanity's unique approach to problem-solving. We didn't just cure the plague, we proved something. The central crystal matrix pulsed with new energy, and a holographic projection filled the chamber. It showed the galaxy as it had been billions of years ago, when the precursors still walked among the stars. Their civilization had achieved what many thought impossible: true synthesis between organic consciousness and quantum reality. They knew they couldn't last forever, Kiran explained, reading the ancient data as it streamed through his consciousness. So they created tests, scattered throughout the galaxy. They wanted to find species worthy of their legacy, races that could understand both the quantum and the organic, the logical and the emotional. Maya's eyes widened as she processed the implications. The Aetherians were chosen as guardians, not just of knowledge, but of this moment, and humanity. Humanity proved that advancement doesn't always mean complexity. Sarah finished. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come from seeing things differently, from refusing to accept limitations. The holographic display shifted, revealing designs for technology beyond anything currently known in the galaxy. But these weren't weapons or tools of destruction. They were bridges between consciousness and reality, ways to expand understanding and connection across the cosmos. The precursors weren't looking for conquerors or even scholars, Sarah said, her form glowing with the light of revelation. They were looking for builders, species that could work together to create something greater than themselves. A communication signal chimed, and the voice of the Council's High Administrator filled the chamber. They had been monitoring everything through their ship's sensors, and their tone had changed from hostility to awe. We were wrong, the Administrator admitted. About the Aetherians, about humanity, about everything. The Precursor's legacy was never meant to be hoarded or controlled. It was meant to be shared, to bring species together. Sarah stepped forward. Then let's share it. The Aetherians can continue as guardians of knowledge, but not in isolation. Humanity offers itself as partners, bridges between the quantum and the physical. Together, we can help the galaxy understand these gifts. The next few hours were a flurry of activity as Council ships landed on Lumeria for the first time since the quarantine. Representatives from dozens of species walked the crystal halls, witnessing the beginning of a new era in galactic history. The library had transformed, its systems now a hybrid of Aetherian quantum architecture and human innovation. The plague that had nearly destroyed one civilization had led to the birth of something unprecedented, a true partnership between species. You know, James said to Sarah as they watched humans and aliens alike explore the library's renewed chambers, some might say this was an awfully complex way to bring us all together. Sarah's form shimmered with what might have been laughter. The precursors understood something we're only now beginning to grasp. The greatest achievements don't come from individual brilliance or advanced technology. They come from different species learning to see through each other's eyes, to bridge the gaps between their understanding. Sarah stood at the center of it all, watching as her crew mingled with Aetherians and Council representatives. The scars on Earth's ships would be repaired, but they would keep them as reminders, not of battle, but of the day humanity proved that courage and compassion could overcome even the greatest challenges. "So," she asked, turning to both her human colleagues and their Aetherian partners, "what do we build first?" The answer lay in the quantum matrices all around them, in the combined wisdom of ancient guardians and young explorers. The precursors had not sought to create empires or weapons, they had sought to create connections. And now, in the merged knowledge of humanity's determination and the Aetherians' wisdom, their legacy would finally bear fruit. The stars above Lumeria shone with new promise as the galaxy's civilizations began to understand what the precursors had known all along, that the greatest power in the universe wasn't quantum technology or advanced weapons, but the ability of different species to reach across the void and help each other grow. And in the library's crystal halls, where crisis had led to transformation, the next chapter of galactic history began to unfold.